It was a practice session, apparently. There is some Zoom setting that.
Okay.
All right, I think we can begin. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Industry Connect Committee and blended PGP community at IIMA, I'm delighted to welcome you to this session. It's an immense honor to welcome our guest, Mr. Ravi Venkatesan. Ravi sir is the former chairman of Microsoft India and Humans India, the founder of Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship, and the board chair of the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. He has spent his career at the intersection of high stakes corporate strategy and large scale social impact. Sir, I was personally introduced to you and your work through GAME. Seeing the groundbreaking and inspiring work being done there by empowering the missing middle, which is the Indian entrepreneurs, has been a personal point of inspiration for me. To be hosting you today after analyzing your strategic journey at Microsoft feels like a full circle moment. To lead our discussion today, we are honored to have Professor Chitra Singla. Professor Chitra is a faculty member in the strategy area here at Ahmedabad, and her expertise in corporate strategy and international business is immense. Professor, I want to share on behalf of the cohort that the passion and dedication you bring to class truly pushes us to go above and beyond. And honestly, this session is actually a result of the curiosity you sparked in us. I will hand over the floor to Professor Chitra to take it forward.
Thank you, Rutuja, and thank you, BPGP cohort, and welcome, Mr. Venkatesan. Very, very happy to have you here and very honored to have this opportunity to interact with you.
No, I'm very pleased to be here as well. I love engaging with young people who are about to embark on the best part of their careers. So thanks, Rutuja, for reaching out on LinkedIn.
Great, Mr. Venkatesan. So, like I was sharing with you before the call, that this talk is an outcome of the course we were doing strategy in emerging markets. So, and you were one of the protagonists in one of the case studies we were doing with Microsoft. We were doing on Microsoft. So, how about starting with your journey in Microsoft? What has been your experience? And if you would like to share with us that what has been your journey of
Of Microsoft.
heading Microsoft India, especially, and
Okay.
if you can also elaborate on your counterparts' experience of heading China and what were the differences you could see there.
Good. But look, first of all, thank you for inviting me. And that's a good starting point. But that case is so old that we should
Yeah,
quickly move into a more contemporary realm. So
certainly.
it's a good starting point for the conversation. So um, it's it's been 20 years, so it's a bit hazy. I joined Microsoft in 2003, late 2003, having spent 15 years building diesel engines. So I was a hardcore diesel engineer out of IIT Bombay, went to the US to study, graduated from Harvard Business School, started working at Cummins Engine Company, building diesel engines, gensets. In 1996, I came back to India to set up Tata Cummins in Jamshedpur, and then ended up becoming the chairman for Cummins India. But in 2003, I made this unusual shift from diesel engines to Microsoft, and um, it's worth recounting my start there because the headhunter called, and it was in October, and I said, "Boss, this has got to be a joke. It's not April 1, but there's nobody who's less qualified to, um uh, you know, be the head of Microsoft in India." And he said, "Don't be a fool. Get on a plane. No, you'll never get to meet Bill Gates again. So just even if it's just for meeting Bill Gates, you go and come back." So I said, "That's a good plan." In those days, Bill used to interview all senior people. That's how he did quality assurance. So it was supposed to be 20 minutes. So I said, "Bill, the only reason I'm here is because I wanted to meet you because I don't even do email. So back in 2003, my secretary used to print email and gave me a file at the end of the day. I'd go home after dinner, I would mark it up with my replies and give it back to him in the morning to type up. So I said, look, I have no interest in technology, but I'm very interested in meeting you. Anyway, we talked for a long time, and then he said, you better learn how to do email quickly. And so that's how the Microsoft journey started in first week of January 2004. Being from outside the industry, one of the things I did was, for the first few months, just went and spoke to everybody. I spoke to customers, I spoke to ordinary people, government, and I was shocked. I was shocked by two things. And one is the degree to which the company was disliked and distrusted. So the success was admired. Everybody wanted their son or daughter to get hired there. Bill Gates, a lot of admiration. But the company was not trusted or respected. And sort of like Facebook of our times, bluntly. And so that the core issue was it had very high market share, and customers were a little pissed off at paying the Microsoft tax, and the company was being investigated in every jurisdiction for its business practices in the US, in EU, and in India. And so job number one was, how do you change the way we engage with both business and society and earn some trust and respect? The second thing was, it was shockingly small. I came from building diesel engines, and diesel engines are important, but they're not a high growth industry. But I was still stunned at how small Microsoft was, less than 1,000 people, about 100 million in revenues, and they were celebrating 12% growth, which I call the Hindu rate of growth. So I was very surprised by the low expectations people had from India. So these were the two issues. It was trust and changing aspirations. And so that was my big job. My big job was to try and see, how do we change the way we show up and act in a more mature, responsible, and humble way. And on the other hand, how do we reset, recalibrate what success in India looks like? And I took a very bold gamble. So in August, I don't know if it's there in the case, but in August of 2004, we had our first review with Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, and it was India and China together. And the way this is done in Microsoft is like it's a Roman Colosseum. Everybody sits in a circle. You're like gladiators in the center, and the questions are flying at you from all directions. And it's pretty intense. And so it was a high stakes meeting for us, because out of that would determine my own credibility as a new leader, but also whether India would get investments. And so what I decided to do is not leave it to chance. So I started working with, in those days, Business India, and we created a cover story of our strategy. And so when I went on August 17th to Seattle, instead of a PowerPoint deck, we gave out the Business India magazine, which says, hey, here's Microsoft's new strategy for success in India. And Bill liked that audacity, saying you've gone public with our strategy even before we've discussed it and reviewed it. So, of course, there was now no retreating. And so we started from there. If you fast forward about 7-8 years, I think there was an extraordinary transformation of our business in India. We had grown to In revenue terms, we had grown about eight times in 8 years to more than $1 billion. And then we'd grown to the largest number of people in India, where every part of Microsoft was now established in the country, from research to development to services and so on. Most importantly, we worked so hard on rebuilding trust. By 2008, we were on the list of the most admired companies in India, always number one, beating Hindustan Unilever for the most admired multinational company in India. Infosys was the best overall. And that's a different story because I joined the board of Infosys right after that. And yeah, so it was quite a successful transformation. What was going on in China was very different. I think they continue to struggle to build trust with the Chinese government, despite the best efforts of Bill Gates and Craig Mundie, who's in the case, and Tim Chen, my counterpart in China. And I think, in many ways, India being less centrally organized and purposeful than China made it easier for us to navigate our way to success. The second thing that made a difference is Indian IT exploded. I tell people, look, the 80% of life or 95% of life is just luck and being in the right place at the right time. So I was, and the company was at the right place in 2004. If you remember 2004 to 11, two things happened. It was the fastest growth of India's GDP ever. We still are nowhere near that period of 8.5% growth. And the big explosion of Indian IT happened. And so we were very successful in riding that wave. And so Microsoft China was unable to catch that wave. They also had more turnover at the top. So during my 8-year term, there were 3 leaders in China. And continuity makes a big difference. And by the time, after 2011, Xi Jinping became the premier of China, and they took a very different direction in terms of geopolitics. Trust between the US and China collapsed, and Microsoft, being a poster child for an American company, I think has a much diminished presence compared to India. So the stories diverged for a variety of reasons, particularly, I would say, geopolitics. But there's a lot of lessons for people who are interested in building global businesses from the whole Microsoft in India story. I wrote a book about it. Yeah. So after the case, Harvard Business Review, the publisher, came to me and said, why don't you write a book about this? So this was called Conquering the Chaos. And it made the case for why, if you can win in India, you can win anywhere. And there are 3 main ideas that I put out in the book in terms of what it takes to succeed in India if you're a global company. And the first is willingness to take a very long-term perspective. So I was able to convince Bill Gates that, look, particularly given China is going to be difficult, if you're a global company and you don't succeed at scale in India, then you really aren't very successful. You basically won't succeed in emerging markets if you don't learn to succeed in India. And so we were able to get Bill and then a whole set of leaders really saying, we'll do whatever it takes and play the long game. The second principle for success, if you're going to win in India, is, look, the market is different. And we know this because we live here. And you can't just sell a global product at global prices with a global business model and hope to succeed. Okay, then you have a Harley Davidson, which is in the news again. Okay, so you'll sell 100 motorcycles while Enfield is selling 100,000 motorcycles. So you need to be able to adapt your product and your business model for the local context. And I'll come back to that. And the third and final thing is, if you don't have the right leader for the country, And the right leader is somebody who is both incredibly entrepreneurial and risk-taking, as well as deeply trusted by the top of the company all the way to the CEO and the board, and therefore has the permission to do things differently, then you're not going to succeed. So just a quick one in terms of changing the business model. It's not in the case, but it happened soon after. One of our big challenges in India, which is there in the case, is piracy. Today, with software being delivered through the cloud, that's less of an issue. But back in the time of the case, China's piracy rate was 82%, India was 75%. No, China was 92%, we were 75%. And the biggest competitor for us was not Google Docs, it was pirated software. And so we were trying to combat software theft. And I remember the meeting that I'd taken Bill Gates to meet Dayanidhi Maran. And Bill said, look, isn't it time that India cares about IP? You're such a big IT country and all that. And Dayanidhi was 32 or 33 years old, and he was very irreverent. So he said, I agree with you, Mr. Gates. I'll do everything I can as government of India. But you must remember that in India, we're a very old civilization, and copyright means the right to copy. So I can say anything as government of India, but people are still going to copy things. So maybe you should go change your business model. So everybody in Microsoft was really upset by that statement. But the greatness of the company is we listened to it. And so we began to experiment with an idea back then called differential pricing, which is how do you charge people differently for the same, roughly the same product based on their ability to pay. So we took Microsoft Office, which was, a very common product, and we basically worked out differential pricing. So if you're an enterprise customer, think Infosys, Reliance, Unilever, or whoever, you end up paying a substantial amount of money, $200 a license. This is before software as a service. And if you're a small business, you pay $50. If you're, a student, you pay, very little. If you're government of India, you pay based on your per capita GDP. If you're a not-for-profit, you pay nothing. If you're in school or college, you pay $2 a year. So we were able to take the same product, roughly, switch on some of the features or switch off some of the features and charge very, very different amounts for it. And so we were able to collect some amount of money from everyone. And Office became a $500 million business like that. So this is a great example of how we were able to change product and business model for India. Another thing we introduced was Windows Starter Edition for India. Those days, people used to say, hey, cost of hardware is going down, cost of software, particularly Microsoft software, is just going up and up and up. And so for Windows, we experimented and introduced something called Starter Edition, which was $20 instead of $65, $80, $100 a license. So there was a tremendous amount of innovation of product and business model, which we were allowed to do. And the final thing, as I said, is the leadership issue is very important. You need somebody here who is entrepreneurial, willing to take risk. The definition of leadership is somebody who's willing to ask for forgiveness, not permission. आप permission पूछोगे तो कभी मिलने वाला नहीं है. So you have to be willing to take risks. So I've got a fun little thing here. Can you see this?
Yeah.
What is it?
$1 bill.
But can you read what's on it, or it's difficult?
It's a little bit difficult.
Okay, this $1 bill has got somebody writing, I was wrong, and it is signed Bill Gates. So I got into this argument with Bill Gates over something, and I decided, chalo, even if I lose my job, why should I give up? And I fought for it. And Bill really admired people who, whether they were right or wrong, had conviction and would fight till the end for their ideas. And so finally agreed, you're probably right, let's do it. And he gave me this $1 bill, which I kept as my retirement savings plan. So if the rupee melts away, then I can at least auction off this and feed the family. So anyway, Microsoft was a good experience for 8 years, and we were able to transform the business to what it is today. And then others have, after me, have come on and done even better things built on that foundation. And I'm certainly very glad that I was there for that period of time. But that was a long answer to a very simple question.
No, but it had so many good lessons, and I am very happy that you are giving a definition of risk. Usually, people think it's all about taking financial risk, but you are saying it's okay if my job is at stake. Sometimes it takes that for a leader to put on, bet. I think that's a
Yeah.
very important message for the future CEOs, who are attending these sessions, that what it takes to be the leader, especially
The
when
most important quality of leadership is courage, because if you don't have courage, you have nothing, and you're never going to be a leader. So, and courage has many definitions, but one of them is the willing to do what you believe and ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah, I really, that is a very good takeaway for me also to take back to my class, that better to ask for forgiveness rather than, for permission. I think that's very nicely said. And I'm kind of jumping the gun here because you have very diverse background being an engineer, especially with diesel engine expertise, and then you got into IT and you did fantastically well with Microsoft, and now you are also looking at game, which is related to Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship, since I also work with family businesses and entrepreneurs. So I'm very fascinated to know about what has been your take on what are the bottlenecks that Indian entrepreneurs are facing who are not unicorns. Some have easy access to capital, but there is a large chunk of SMEs in India with traditional businesses, with new businesses, with less number of workforce. What is stopping them, according to you, given your experience in this domain?
Yeah, the crisis of one of the crises of India's economy is that we don't have enough mid-sized and large businesses. So if you look at this pyramid of businesses, we have about 63, 65 million businesses, 6.5 crore businesses. And a few of them, all the big names, are very large. But those will be hardly 25,000 companies. And 95% of our businesses employ less than 5 people. 98% employ less than 10 people. And more important than the fact that they are small is that they are stunted, which is if you come back in 5 years or 10 years, they're still employing 3 people or 5 people. They're not growing. And this is very different from China, where you have businesses starting and many of them grow to become small. The small becomes medium, and a few medium become world-class large companies. In India, that whole escalator of group is broken. And I think this is one of the biggest issues we face, which we don't seem to know how to deal with. And partly it's a societal issue because we are elitist. We love to celebrate unicorns, big companies, and Adani ne ye kiya, or this fellow has IPO'd and is worth now 3 billion. Yeah, that's fine. That's important. But what determines the strength of the economy, job creation, and prosperity is how distributed this growth is. Distributed both in terms of size as well as in geography. It can't just be growth in the big cities. It has to be growth in small towns, villages, everything. And that's why I started focusing on what is called mass entrepreneurship. Mass means widely distributed businesses. Now, why is this situation happening, and how do we fix it? Well, the core issue is ecosystem. Okay, entrepreneurship happens when the ecosystem in a place, the business ecosystem in a place is healthy. And in some cities in India, it is quite healthy. Bangalore, where I live, is a good example where, while there are a lot of problems, by and large, it's a flourishing entrepreneurial ecosystem. Ahmedabad, where you all are right now, is a reasonably healthy business ecosystem. Okay, not very, but reasonably. So there are 3, 4, 5 places in India where it's healthy. But for most of India, the business ecosystem is sick. So what's going on here? In a healthy ecosystem, first of all, you have already successful entrepreneurs. And people look up and they say, I want to be like him or her. Okay, so why did Bangalore become this IT hub? Because you had spectacular successes of the first generation entrepreneurs like Narayan Murthy or Azim Premji. Okay, then you had second generation entrepreneurs like Binni Bansal and Sachin Bansal of Flipkart. Then you had third generation of successful entrepreneurs, etc. So success breeds success. So what you need is at least a few relevant role models and heroes. And in most of our towns and places, there aren't relevant role models. So what do people aspire to do? They don't want to become entrepreneurs. They want a government job, okay? Or they want to do IAS, or they want an IT job, okay, in an air-conditioned environment. So the role models, we have to give better role models. The second thing is, related point is what's happening in schools. Again, particularly the vast majority of people still come from government schools, but even the private schools, they don't graduate learning, entrepreneurship. They don't have a desire to start a business. I'm not sure out of this batch how many want to go back to a job versus starting their own thing. My guess is most people want a good job. Okay. So we have to instill this entrepreneurial mindset. I'll come back to how we're doing it. Then you have all the challenges. Access to capital is broken. So even with all the schemes of Government of India today, only 15% of businesses are able to borrow money from a bank at a reasonable interest rate. So the others are paying 40%, 50% interest rates, and so they can't invest. Okay, when cost of capital is so high, it becomes very difficult to invest in machinery or IT and these things. Many parts of the country, the power tariff is very high. Maharashtra, the power tariff is 12 rupees a unit. You can't compete with an industrial tariff at 12 rupees, 13 rupees a unit. It has to be half that. Or internet access. For all of Jio's success or Airtel, internet access is still a challenge for many parts of the country. Infrastructure is a big issue. And most of all, the ease of doing business is painful in every part of our country. Okay. So it's painful for a big business, but for a small business, it's even harder. So unless we figure out how to make starting a business much, much easier and growing much easier, we're not going to change the situation. I think that's half the issue. The other half of the issue is mindset. So we've been working with small businesses and on small entrepreneurs now for 6 years. And we have a giant mindset problem in our country. Half our small business owners have a victim mindset. Hi, Biju. And a victim mindset means, how can I grow here? Look at all these challenges. Okay. But if you look around and see, in spite of the same challenges, some people are really successful. Okay. So what are those entrepreneurs doing? The difference is the growth mindset. The second mindset that's very common in India is after a small amount of success, people say, "Bas, I don't want to grow anymore." Okay. Because look, I have a house, I have 2 cars, I'm able to take some vacations, the kids are going to a good college. I don't want to grow beyond this because after that is only hassles. Okay, so why bother? So as a result of these 2 mindset issues, we are not creating productive, innovative firms the way China has. So what we're trying to do is very simple, city by city, we started our work in Nagpur, and we're in Vizag, in West Godavari, in Dimapur, and Nagaland. What we're trying to do is bring together the people in a place to come and address these issues. And the core issue is growth. How do you get existing businesses to grow faster and faster? How do you celebrate their success and inspire more new people to come and emulate that success? And all I can say is finally it seems to be working well. So our goal is can we get 200 districts in our country becoming growth hubs? Today, there are probably 20. So if you want Viksit Bharat, you need Viksit districts. And that's the core of what we are trying to build.
So
But
it's
these
a
are
very
nice
passionate.
theoretical answers. They're not going to help any one of these people be successful, more effective as a business manager or leader. So we should quickly focus on what they can be thinking and doing.
I hear you because I work with SMEs a lot. I also feel that, there is an aspiration, with all this social media, they can see how companies in India are growing. And in India, yes, we celebrate success a bit too much. Our idea of success also is unicorns, nothing less than that. So, but I also feel, and maybe we'll have this discussion some other time, that maybe some system has to be created to share the risk with them. It's
Yeah.
not that they don't have aspiration. It's the sharing of risk has to be there to give push to some of them, right? Even if they have access of capital, the fear of failure is just too high, right?
So actually, that's a very good point. And what we have found is the perception of risk may be greater than the actual risk itself. And what we find is the most effective way to deal with that fear is to put them in cohorts. So if you take 20 businesses at a time and say, we're going to put you through a 6-month growth program, okay? And we call this growth rater. And we work with them to find some growth event in their business which they can execute. Okay. And a growth event can be launching a new product or starting to sell online on Amazon or getting their first export order or tackling a new customer segment, whatever it is. We start identifying something that they can do in their business to grow. And in 6 months, we help them execute it. And suddenly, where they were not growing, one or two of them start growing at 30%, 50%. And then the other people see this person and they say, Are wo kar raha hai, to main bhi kar sakta hu. And so this becomes contagious. So we see this particularly with cohorts of women-owned businesses, but we're also seeing them in mixed cohorts as well. And I think overcoming this fear that constrains them and seeing what is possible and opening each other's minds, learning from each other, encouraging each other is the most powerful way we have found to stimulate growth.
I hear you. I'm genuinely very passionate about this topic, but I don't
Good,
want to
come
digress the
join us in
conversation.
game.
But you and I will certainly touch base. Let me hand over the discussion to Rutuja because I also want to give students also opportunity to talk to you. Rutuja, over to you. And but Mr. Venkatesan, you and I need to
Sure,
get on a call separately.
we will, we will.
Yeah.
And
Rutuja,
Rutuja, I
over
don't
to
know
you.
what you have done, but we have 134 people on the call, and you told me it's going to be some
Uh,
25.
yes. So this is very encouraging. In fact, it's the first time we've had so many of us join with us. So I think it's the power that you have.
No, you've done a good job promoting it.
Thank you. Sorry, Ashwath, before I let you speak, I just want to thank you so much, Professor Varki, for joining. If you want to say something, please do.
Hello, Ravi.
Hi,
Okay, I
Biju.
also have. Yeah, hi. So long time since we have got a bit extremely interesting and the same passion with which. So I have two questions to ask, which is slightly offbeat about it. One of your most admirable features, having worked with you very closely, is your ability to work with very difficult people. Okay, in fact, I told somebody today that, when I worked with Ravi, because I'm now on some assignment with the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. So I told somebody that I was the best boy in the class of Ravi. So then people actually were telling, I'm sure Chitra would get a heart attack for that. So, your secret in terms of working with very difficult people, that is something which I did not learn from you. And the second one is about, the 360-degree transitions you made in your career, which is actually amazing. Okay, so some sort of, how did you really, very, very quickly, you never knew banking, but you ran a bank successful, and the proof is that none of us have still gone to jail. So, which is actually the factor that you're handled very well. Okay, so
Yeah,
these are
so
two
no,
questions which I have.
the two questions are good ones and they're related. First of all, yes, it was a relief to have mature, sensible, easy to work with leaders like you in that environment. So I'm still very grateful for that. No, look, um, one of the things you realize is that in any situation, business situation or any situation, you're suddenly thrown into a mix with all sorts of people, and you don't have any choice in who you get to work with. They're all stakeholders. And the other thing you realize, if you're smart, is not one of them is in a position to necessarily help you, but every one of them is in a position to slow you down or thwart you. Okay, so your job, if you're going to be leading and leading with influence and not authority, is to somehow get this crazy crew to work together on two or three things. They don't have to love each other, they don't have to love you, but can you at least get everybody working together on the top two or three things that matter? And I'll give an example of our joint experience at the Bank of Baroda. So in 2015, Governor RBI, Raghuram Rajan, called me and said, Ravi, we want to your help in turning around this bank. And it's the first experiment of bringing in private sector person to help turn around a public sector bank. And I said, Raghu, look, I don't know anything about banking or public sector. And he said, you better do it, because do you think you'll do a worse job than those who screwed it up? So I said, that's a very low bar. Okay, but let's go and try. And then the appointment letter came from Ministry of Finance. And the appointment letter was 5 pages. 4.5 pages was what you cannot do, what decisions you cannot make. So I said, look, this is very strange. You're expected to turn around something, but you have no power. So this was a classic example of where you have to learn to lead by influence and not authority. Okay. And there's a very strange mix of people here. There is the regulator, there's the Ministry of Finance, which owns 57%. Then you have other shareholders, then you have a board, none of whom you picked. And then you have management who have grown up through the bank, and they have very different views of what the future should be and how you get there. And you're supposed to, in 3 years, get everybody working together. It's an impossible task. So what did I do, and what do I think is the generalizable principle? You don't try and transform the institution. You have no chance in 3 years. You don't have a chance even in 30 years. What you decide is, look, what are 3-4 things that must be done? Okay. And if you do these 3-4 things, then the bank or the institution will be in much better shape. And can I get the two people who have real power to support that? In this case, it's RBI and Ministry of Finance. And then can we align everybody, board, management, everybody, around just these 3 or 4 things? And that's all we did, if you remember. We said, look, job number 1 is we have to clean up the balance sheet. We have to come clean with our losses and then raise fresh capital and shore up our balance sheet. Number 2, the human capability in the bank is very, very low compared to what we need. So we better have a very strong set of plans around improving the human and organizational capability of the organization, which you led. And then there's a third piece around, can we stop lending to bad people? Okay. The amount of frauds was just off the charts. And so we had become very, very attractive to all sorts of bad people. So, how do you change the architecture of the bank using technology, change the way you make decisions so that bad people don't get loans? So, if you could just do these three things, you're going to be much better off. So the challenge was get working with everybody to just address these three things. And that becomes a skill, right? So for instance, how do you get people who've grown up in the bank 30, 40 years and they don't trust these outsiders? You know, they'll be here for 3 years, they'll go away. We built the bank, we know better. Why should I change? Well, how do you get them trusting you? So what I found is the best way was to become a mentor to their children. All of them had children who were going to college. They wanted advice on which university to apply to. How do I get a scholarship? This, that, and the other. So I became basically were a career counselor for their children. And in the process, they were so grateful to me that they would listen to what I wanted them to do at work. Okay. On the board were very colorful characters who are friends of ours, like the mayor of Baroda, former mayor of Baroda. So you have to figure out, what does former mayor of Baroda enjoy doing? Okay, another gentleman was a BJP spokesperson from Delhi, okay, and a chartered accountant. So how do you establish common interest with this gentleman? It turns out we both care about cows. Okay, he was running a big goshala, and I love animals. So common denominator was we care about cows. So you find whatever is of common interest and use that, whether it's the children, the cows, or something else, and find a way to get everybody working on those three things. Okay, that's what it takes.
This is one fun, I'm sure. It's just for information. I'm sure Professor Chitra is there, because how did you find common ground with other professor, Narayan Swami, who is Professor Chitra's professor?
Oh, Narayan Swami was a particular delight. But Narayan Swami is a person of very, very, very clear and firm opinions. And but he respects people who are able to engage intellectually and hold their own. And so we would have very long flights back to Bangalore after the board meetings. So you drive together, you fly together, and then you drive in Bangalore traffic together. So that's 5 hours. So in 5 hours, we would talk deeply about issues and found that on many of them, we actually thought similarly. And his daughter read my book. So Narayan Swami's daughter became a fan of mine, and therefore he became okay with me. That didn't help me, because on one critical issue, he took a dissenting view.
Yeah.
And I said, that's fine, Professor, I respect you're the chair of the audit committee. I don't agree with your view. And I've checked with the other fellow board members and the RBI, and you're welcome to express a dissenting view, which he wrote and which we documented. So I think he admired the fact that I gave him the opportunity to disagree without being disagreeable. So should we go back to the students now?
Yeah.
Hey, Rutuja, back to you.
Yes.
Hopefully that was interesting, though, because it was covered a lot of ground.
Fascinating, and these are the real lessons of leadership. Ultimately, one has to manage the people, take everyone along, and the usual classroom gyan may not help.
Yeah. No, in fact, I've been circulating a small article on LinkedIn, which I'll share with Rituja, and she can share. It is Satya Nadella talking just 2 weeks ago to all the senior people at Microsoft. And he said, look, leadership is not about doing a good job when the conditions are perfect. Okay, it is actually getting things done when conditions are highly imperfect. Okay, and that's when we need leadership. So the Bank of Baroda story is a classic example of that. It was far from perfect, and yet you're supposed to get something useful done. And for that, you have to take a lot of people along who don't think like you and probably don't even like you. And that's the skill that you have to learn. And in the age of AI, if you know how to do that, you don't have to worry about anything else. Okay, leadership is the ultimate skill in this 21st century, and you better learn how to be good at it.
Thank you so much. It's been very interesting. On the side, we've been chatting, and if you see what, it's in fact, we are actually seeing we have a course on negotiation strategies, and we can actually see that at work with your experience in Bank of Baroda. Sorry.
Good. So why don't you do one thing? Scrape the chat and send it on an email. Okay. There may be some really interesting questions. Just copy paste the.
So we will allow
Yeah.
for now. I think we can.
No. We won't get to everybody. That's why. Just
Okay,
send me
sure.
the questions also.
I'll do that. I will do that. Sorry, Ashwin, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for taking out the time to speak with us, Mr. Venkatesan. Through this conversation, you've spoken about courage, about luck constituting 95% of what happens to you. You've spoken about perceived risk and real risk. You've spoken about yelling at your boss and getting your way as well. What I want to ask is, one has to maintain that level of audacity to continue to be able to do that. And as you grow older, as you join bigger organizations, somewhere that choice of conforming to the norm is always there, and it's the easier choice to make. So how do you maintain that audacity continuously throughout your life?
It's a superb question. And I would say that the most important thing is to develop that audacity early in life, because it's like a muscle. If you develop that muscle early, then it tends to sustain and become stronger over time. If you start out and you're weak and you start, you play the conforming game, then you're going to run into trouble quite quickly. Or else you're going to be so unhappy about the compromises that you make that you're really good. It's not worth it. So I was lucky because I had bosses, early bosses, who gave me the freedom to disagree and not conform. And I wasn't punished for taking those risks, not asking for permission, willing to ask for forgiveness. So that was just random luck that I had managers who were so empowering. Later on, I worked for people who weren't. But as a result of that, I began to have the courage to follow my own path, make my own decisions, for trying my best to take others along, including my manager. But when that wasn't possible, I didn't care anyway. So I remember a classic case in Cummins. It was 2001. The country was going through a recession and we were struggling to grow. And there was a young guy called Ram Praveen Swaminathan. He was 24 years old, TAS officer who had hired. And he saw that our big gen sets were not selling. But at that time, Airtel and Voda and others were rolling out telecom networks, each of which had a small genset. There were lots of malls coming up with small genset, all residential complexes. But we didn't make small gensets. So I put him on that project, and we decided to do something crazy. We bought engines from Tata Motors and TAFE and packaged them into small gensets and started selling them, putting the Cummins brand on it. And it started selling well. So the CEO of the company came, my boss came for a visit. And amongst other things, we proudly showed this off. And then he The whole room went quiet, and when he asked, "Hey, who approved this?" So I said, No one, but we thought it was a good idea and it's selling really well and the margins are good." And yeah, that was a career defining moment. He could have fired me. But he said, "Okay, let's make this a global business." And today, all those small gen sets of Cummins are made outside Pune. Uh, but you have to be willing to take such courageous decisions. And sometimes it won't work out. And the sooner you start making these things in life, the faster, longer it'll sustain and the stronger it'll grow. But thanks for asking the question.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we have another question from
Rutuja, what you should do is put 2, 3 questions together. Otherwise, we're never going to get this series sequentially.
Sure. Let me, all right. So Ajit has a question. Ajit, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll try to keep it brief. Thank you so much, Ravi. So the question is that, you've had experience joining a lot of these new industries and completely new spaces directly at the leadership level, which is something that, we go through at a smaller scale now. And what would you say would be some good learnings as to how to get to know a new industry quickly,
Good.
while from the
In-
proverbial ivory tower?
No, this is a question that Biju also had asked, and I didn't reply to. So I don't know what's the generic success formula, but I'll tell you what I do. First is you have to approach it with a beginner's mind. Okay, so I don't pretend that I know anything about software or banking or energy. I start by admitting I know nothing, and instantly people are willing to teach you. And so, if you bring a beginner's mind and you bring some humility, and you're willing to work really hard to learn, then things work out pretty well. So beginner's mind. It also allows you to bring an outside in fresh perspective. When you grow up in a business, everybody's steeped in that same thinking. It's all convergent. And yeah, whereas when you come come in as an outsider with a beginner's mind and you talk to stakeholders, it turns out everybody else has figured out what's wrong and what needs to change. And it's pretty obvious. It's obvious to everybody except those who made the problem. So in that sense, it's an advantage. The biggest issue is actually creating this alignment. So job number one is figuring out quickly what are the 2, 3 things that need to be done. As I said in BOB, it became clear to me within 3 months. Look, there are 3, 4 jobs to be done, period. In the Infosys board, again, there were two issues we had, and we had to solve those 2 issues. Okay. In Microsoft, it was about changing trust and raising aspirations. Okay. So it turns out that it's not some complicated strategy and all that stuff. There are 2 or 3 things that you have to do. If you do it, you're going to be fine. If you don't do it, you're going to not be successful. So you have to distill it down to that essence. And then the rest of it is understanding how to use power and influence to get the whole system working on those 2 or 3 things. That's all it is.
Got it. Yes, Alice, go ahead.
Hi, Ravi. So my question is, with all this talk about AI eating up so many jobs and so on, if you were a professional starting now, or somewhere early in your career, how would you navigate this whole AI disruption?
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that makes me happy that I'm not young. No, really, it's just the early career challenge of the next decade is going to be a very difficult one. Because people say, look, AI is not going to replace people. It's very hard to replace this quality called judgment. Okay. But how do you develop judgment? Okay. You develop judgment through practice. Or they said, look, if you have domain expertise, then and you can use AI, then you're fine. How am I supposed to develop expertise right out of college? So The problem we have is AI is chopping off the early two rungs of the ladder. So you're supposed to somehow jump directly to the middle of the ladder. Don't know how to do that. But what is the advice I would offer a young person, either out of college or very early stages? Two or three things, maybe. One is, I think, to understand that there is no room for mediocrity. Okay, for 30, 40 years, there was, when you look at supply and demand, you just sort of average, showed up, you'd be okay. I think that's over. And so people are saying, no, 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 work from home. Narayan Murthy is an ass. I won't work more than this. I think there's going to be a sharp correction coming. Okay. You have to be exceptional at something. And that exceptional comes from operating in your sweet spot, the ikigai, the convergence of what you're good at, what you love, and what the world cares about, and being willing to work harder than everybody else. Okay, I've never found a substitute for hard work. Okay, so I think learning to be exceptional is very important. Second is the obvious one: better learn to use AI. Whatever you do, whether you're a musician, a graphic artist, a developer, a scientist, better learn how to be using AI at a very proficient level. The third one is these people skills. Get good at it, because no matter what happens, there's still people going to be around, and the ability to work with them and get people to do things the way I've described is precious. The other thing is lose your ego. So people say, oh, well, I can't find a job that's good enough for me. I graduated from IIT, I did some IIM thing. So you expect a certain kind of a job. And you waste 9 months, 16 months waiting for that perfect job. Whereas the most important thing is to take whatever you find and start learning and climbing. So I'm going to do actually a small podcast on this week. It was not that different in 1981, 85 when I was at IIT. There weren't many great jobs, which is why many of us left the country. But one of the things we had to do was stand out. So if there are only limited jobs, then as long as you're the one who's at the front of the line, you're okay. You're not the prime minister who has to solve the national unemployment problem. You have to solve only your employment problem. Okay? So I started working in the factory floor of Kirloskar Cummins in those days. And I was learning to run a lathe, and I was paid, you won't believe this, I was paid 3 rupees a day. And I just looked up ChatGPT to what is the inflation adjusted amount. It turns out to be 1,500 rupees a month. So at the end of the month, what I got was not even enough to pay for the petrol on my kinetic moped. But I did it. And later on, it helped, because when I was graduating from Purdue, the only place that I was willing to give me a job without a green card was Cummins. They said, oh, you worked at Pune and you ran a machine. How interesting. We'll at least interview you. So the point is, if I were coming out of IIT and the only job that's available is delivering packages, I would deliver packages. Okay? Because that's not where I intend to finish my career. Okay, and I learn all about what is the opportunity, challenges of delivering packages, and develop an app for that and build a new kind of business around it, and pretty soon it'll be fine. So this idea that you should start with whatever you get is very important, rather than turn your nose down at it. Start getting experience.
Thank you. That's very insightful. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I know you have a hard stop at 8, so let me know if we can take a few more questions, or
How many more questions are there?
we have 3. We have around 6, 7 more.
Okay, just pick one or two good ones, Rutuja. You just decide what's good.
All right. But sorry, just picking up from Alice, if you can, tell us about the book that you're going to publish next. What the heck do I do with AI? So just a little bit insights on that till we get to the
Yeah,
insights.
my most recent book, which was 3 years old, is What the Heck Do I Do with My Life? And How to Flourish in Our Turbulent Times. The book that'll come out this year is What the Heck Do I Do About AI and How to Flourish in an AI Age. And it's essentially trying to look at what, forget the country, what India needs to do or what your company needs to do. What do you need to do? Okay, as an individual, particularly as a professional, what is it that you need to do to prepare yourself and flourish in these times? Because the reality is, it's the best of times and the worst of times. It all depends on whether you have the right mindset and the right skills and you're in the right place. So, how do you develop the right mindset, the right skills, and the right place so that this is the best possible time in your life? That's what the book is about. I don't want to give too much away. I'm going to start a series of videos now building up to the launch of the book. So stay connected on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah, I know you're very active on LinkedIn, and I'm glad you are, which is why I think we're doing today. One question, I think, in this long and illustrious career, there may be many occasions of failure. How did you manage failure?
Very good question. So I think I write about it in this book. I think the most important thing is to have um, the right way of thinking about success and failure. Okay. So failure is different from setback. Okay. All of us have setbacks. But the point, that's just a natural part of development, of learning, and so forth, of growth. So if you say, okay, I didn't succeed the way I hoped to the first time, and you step back and say, what do I learn from this and course correct? Then, and you pick yourself up and keep going, you're fine. And so the only failure is, as what Churchill said, is giving up, quitting. That's the only thing that is really failure. So, like every person, certainly one who's lived to my age, I've had no shortage of setbacks in my career. And I talk very openly about it. So, for instance, getting to IIT, it took three attempts. The first time I got in, I did fine, but I didn't want to go, and that too, it was to go to IIT Madras. So I said, forget it. So my dad said, you're still very young. It's okay, don't go. Next year, something happened, and I sort of answered. There was negative marking in JEE, and I answered too many wrong questions, and the rank wasn't good. But I went anyway. And luckily, it became a 4-year program. So I took JEE while I was at IIT, and I aced it. But the point is, it took 3 attempts. I applied to Harvard Business School in 1988, and I didn't get in. Those days, there was no email. I called the admissions officer, and they said, bluntly, there are a lot of smart people. There was nothing interesting about you. Do something interesting. So I spent 2 years doing interesting things and reapplied. It was fine. So my point is, whether as a student or later on in professional life, personal life, it's not like everything happened the way you hoped the first time. The trick is to learn from these setbacks and course correct and keep going. And this is the core of what is called a growth mindset, being able to redefine what is success and what is failure. And if you don't have that clearly sorted in your mind, it's going to be very, very difficult in this period.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much for giving that perspective. I think we might have to close. We can go on. We do now.
One sec. Yeah, read these books. I pour myself out into these books largely because it's the only way of getting everything out to everyone. Otherwise, watch the videos.
Sure.
Now, what else? I'm just seeing what's out there.
We can we take more questions? I'm just being mindful of your
Yeah.
time.
Okay, one last question. Pick a really juicy one that most people are interested in.
All right, let's choose. Yes.
We're still doing well on
Share.
audience attention.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've been able to stick it out. Please share an experience of having a difficult manager or boss and how you navigated around her or him. I hope this is juicy enough.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Okay. I think I was lucky. I had generally really good ones or tolerable ones. But I had two who were painful. And the first one happened relatively early in my career. I was still in my 20s. I was running a small factory in the US for Cummins. And my manager was very insecure and didn't like me fundamentally because, he felt threatened. And but he knew that I was well regarded by the big, so he didn't go too far to make me miserable, but enough to make me not want to come into work on Mondays. And I simply outlasted him. Okay. But later on, I realized I could have also been better, in the sense I could have done more to build bridges. It wasn't his job to get along with me. It was my job to get along with him. So I learned an important lesson about manager and employee, which is it's your job to make him or her successful and care about you. So that was a little bit of my own learning. Later on, I had much later on, I had a boss who, we just didn't see the world the same way. And bluntly, it was in Microsoft. And I think I was right, and history vindicated that my worldview was more accurate. And perhaps the only way I managed it was by understanding power and influence well, which is those days Microsoft was still, Bill Gates was still very influential. And I managed successfully to create the illusion that I was quite close to him. And that gave me a certain space. But after some years, I decided that the tax was not worth it, and I went off and became independent. But learning how to navigate power is very important in an organization. Okay. So you have to understand who has it and how do you align that power behind not your personal agenda, but whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Okay.
Yes, that's helpful.
All right.
Professor Chitra, Professor Barki, if there's anything you would want to say before we close.
Mr. Venkatesan, it has been such a wonderful discussion. Honestly, abhi dil bhara nahi hai. So ideally, we could have loved to listen to you for at least 1 more hour, and you yourself have noticed that the attention span hasn't gone down. That means the conversation and the learnings have been great, and hopefully we will get another opportunity to interact with you. We understand that you have some time constraint today, but truly appreciate on behalf of entire BPGP cohort, and I think I can speak on behalf of Biju also and IIMA, that it has been a great opportunity to interact with you, and hope to get more opportunities like this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's been very, very engaging, and the questions were superb, very thoughtful and mature and practical, and I appreciate it. And since we've run out of time, those of you interested, stay connected on LinkedIn or Instagram. That's where I connect with lots of people. So look forward to that, and good luck.
Thank you. Truly
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Rituja. You're the one who made it happen.
Yeah, Rutuja, big round of applause for you
Thank
too.
you.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
giving us your time, sir.
Bye.
And
Thank
Bye,
you.
Biju.
thank you, everyone.